Hello, everybody. I'd like to welcome you back to our interview series with landscape photographer David Muench. He's joining us again to discuss another one of his photographic collections called Natural Connections. And this collection contains some images that David's well known for, which is his use of near-far. So I'd like to welcome back David Muench. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Charlie. Favorite subject of mine.
Wonderful. Well, today we have 16 images that you're going to talk about, and this first one here is called Alpine Floral Mass, and it's certainly a scene that I imagine every nature photographer would like to run into. Could you tell us a little bit about this collection in general, and then the image as well?
Yes, most of these will almost be explicit within each image with a little variance of the type of connection for me. Essentially, what it blossomed from is what has been called as a working situation is near-far.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, natural connections encompasses something right close in front, right detail, something you'd walk on and possibly never pay attention to or make a photograph of a close-up, a macro, something of that. And then the complete landscape, the big picture. What I've done with that near-far is put the two together. They connect for me.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, that leads to a three-dimensional kind of a situation. And you are thinking of the middle ground to tie the two together. It suits well with the 4x5 camera. All of these images are from 4x5 film, and you essentially do a three-dimensional viewing as you look at the image, and you will see what is really abstract, because your eye cannot focus on all of them at once.
Mm-hmm.
You go through this, so you're moving through the image.
Right.
With that said, and then the other connection, and I'll describe it more, is also an ancient connection, which is another one of my portfolios, is a connection with either Anasazi peoples or the ancient Puebloans now, we call them, a tie to historic peoples. I've had many instances where this is very important for me. I will be in a ruin in somewhere or in a cliff dwelling, the Mesa Verde, Aztec, Chaco Canyon all come to mind. There are many more. Navajo National Monument. This is another connection for me that brings a sense that there's a spirit of place that can take over when you're in these places. You can feel them even where there aren't ruins.
Mm-hmm.
There may be rock art or paintings, petroglyphs. That's another portfolio of mine, too. With these right here, this first one, let's go to that one.
Uh-huh.
The collection of alpine plant life is very special to me. You're right above timberline. This is an early summer buildup of flowers, not a buildup, but a connection with a near-far of something right in front, more important flowers, nice to put it in the central part so that your eye is drawn from that point on up through, and you're going into some very important name country. This is a spirit of place kind of a thing with Snowmass Mountain. We're all familiar with Aspen, Colorado, and Snowmass, Maroon Bells area. Well, this
Yes.
is on the west side.
Mm-hmm.
This was an Earth Day poster and among other uses, etc. But the essential thing is connecting. And also the one thing about light here, the soft light, follow through with detail. You have a detail rendering that is very special to me. We go to the second picture here. It's in Monument Valley. This is something I really enjoyed doing very early on, probably in the 60s. Just love dune ripples cascading. It's just like a water image,
Sure.
but it's all sand. Now here you have a different kind of a light. You have a side light very early in the morning, side light, and that gives you an edging of light with, of course, the Yebachai rocks on
Mm-hmm.
top in the background. But the main feature are these ripples, the dunes, and the shapes, so it's a symbolic kind of a thing of the desert and the winds of time kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
and of course the winds make for a changing landscape, and this is part of a challenge to capture some of the changes or the edges of things going on in the landscape, and this is kind of a representative one of that.
Mm-hmm.
I go to the third image, Edges of Time. It's a Baja Mexico image, or is it Sonora? But anyway, it's south of the border in the Pinacati. And here, to me, it's another edge of time. You have the winter to spring, you have the spring blossoms on the hedgehog cactus, and then you have night to daytime at sunrise, where you connect the night to the beginnings of the day and, of course, the sunrise. And at that moment that connects between the two, to me, is, and this is another portfolio of mine, is timeless moments. That's another one that's very important to me, with that moment in between that captures the past and the future. This is very important to me in capturing all that with the light. And of course, the light makes it. This is the thing.
Yes.
But again, it's a close-up of the cactus, and with the distant full-size saguaro, and then the sun just scattering down through there makes it exciting for your eye to travel from near to far.
Yes, very much.
On the fourth image, we have one that don't see very much, but is one of my favorite all-time spots, and that is above the Colorado River with the Fisher Towers and La Salle's. The place is very special to me. It always has been since day one. This particular image really plays up the three-dimensional organization of subjects and light. I mean, you have your rock in the front, which is really very close. This was a 300-millimeter lens on the 4x5.
Wow.
So it's really, so what I have here is F90 and be there. That isn't going to help anybody anywhere, but that's what it was.
Yep.
I don't think I used the polarizer. I don't think that, so that I could keep it all in. But it literally, to get to the focus on the river below, you don't just tilt the lens forward to give you sharpness running all throughout. You could just a little tiny bit. But if you do that, you run focus from the rocks to the Fisher Towers, La Salle Mountains top, and the river goes out of focus.
Right.
And so you're back to giving it covering it with a tremendous aperture to just do the vertical focus for sharpness.
Yep.
So you might as well not do it. Just try and get it from near to far with a focus range, and use the smallest aperture you can possibly find.
Sure.
And of course, some of the digital cameras, I think 32 is about, F32 is about the best.
Well, there's a lot of depth here.
Yeah, and it's all sharp.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost impossible to do with current cameras. This is a 4x5 film kind of a thing that works. But some people don't want that, don't need it. But this was my pushing it to the edge, and I'm literally on the edge anyway.
Right.
But this is one to try and capture that, and everything sharp. Placement of subjects, in exciting, essentially placement versus spatial placement of things. And so again, I think we talked about this before. I have placed subjects in a three-dimensional work to capture a spirit of the place, and versus using just space and emotion totally. So it's one of those things where really mixing science with the scientific part of photography with the emotion part, and trying to make them come together and work. And the photography has a chance to do that.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Well, it really grabs the viewer and pulls them through the picture quite effectively.
Yeah, it has a light placement against each other too. The light areas, one is pulling on the upper left is pulling out to the left. The one on the bottom, the rock comes in. I've just let it in enough to send your eye over to the right. I mean, it is on the left, but it's really leaning over toward the right, and your eye's going over, then back down the river, and then out the left side, yet it really wants to read to the right side as light's coming in on the Fisher Towers and LaSalle. So you're really traveling around in this shot.
Mm-hmm. Well, your next image here, is that the cover of a book, one of your books?
This was a Sierra Club cover one time,
Okay.
and it's been I've forgotten if this is one that's Rainier at Eunice Lake with bear grass. It's been used considerably. It's been an icon for many uses, and it's just lucky. I mean, I don't know if these. I look at some of these, been to return to some of these locations, and things are a little more roughed up, and I don't even know if it's people or animals or drought catching these, or it's just rough on it by unusual storms. But it was just very dramatic at this point in time, and there again, it's the same situation of placement of an interesting subject. I mean, bear grass are fascinating in this alpine world of the Cascades. And, I mean, all those tiny flowers, I mean, it's just on there. They're not just the large shape of flower, but they're all little tiny blossoms on there. And then you have this great mountain in the background, one of my favorites in the Cascade Range. I mean, how can you miss on Rainier? It's just so commanding, so demanding. Well, I try and equal it out with some of the country around there. That's, before it goes off again.
Yeah.
We won't talk about that much.
No.
St. Helens already did that.
That's a hurry up and wait.
That. Or that person from Tacoma will call me a lot.
Yeah.
That's the first place that happens with some.
Got the mountain lit, you've got the tree silhouette, and you've got light on the bear grass, and that's kind of an interesting combination. Now, does anybody look at this and say, oh, you lit it with flash, or did you have some light sneaking in around another side of something on the right side of the camera?
And looking, this looks natural, but I think this is flash. I'm pretty sure this is flash because the mountain, but it could have been very late light over to the right side, but I'm looking at this, and this was flash because it's more head-on. But it is a flash, and I started pretty early using flash for foreground things, and I do now quite a bit with digital shooting, is so that you can expose for the distant and make the exposure for the distant area or subject, and then flash the foreground, and so it doesn't go all dark.
Right.
And of course, that's the thing with, what is it, HDR? I mean, it's trying to, you're always trying to bring light into everything, but I don't want a collection of detail all the time. I really am frowning on that after doing it so much during a lifetime and a career. I really like to have a little mystery, a little magic at this point in time. But still, if you highlight something in the foreground, then the rest can go dark. But it's important to have something to focus on that picks up some light to balance out with the distant, either landscape or place, whatever it is.
Very nice. Well, the next one is Mount San Jacinto Desert Bouquet.
Yes, this is another one was a timeless moment because of the spring blooms. You had a storm passing over. It's one of my favorite mountains. That's the picture is actually made about sea level, maybe 100 feet above sea level, right near Palm Springs. And you're looking up 10,800 feet on the north face of San Jacinto, one of my all-time favorite mountains. I've always loved this. It does become a little smoggy in that particular area. It's right out from Los Angeles, but the two peaks, both of them there, the San Jacinto and San Gorgonio, are old grayback. On the other side are great gateways to Southern California, and they're gorgeous mountains. And this one, there again, the image captures that near, well, you call it a near far. It's connecting spring blossoms with the stormy, kind of a spring mood on the top of the mountain, way up in the sky. It really ties earth to sky, and very special to me.
Mm-hmm.
This is the kind of thing that, and you can label it near far, but it's a connection for me for mountain and desert. I mean, you're looking above timberline from the desert level, and it's one of those. It's also one of those islands in the sky that I like to call.
Oh, sure.
In this Arizona, and even over here in New Mexico, there are a couple of them.
Mm-hmm.
Very special, these islands that pop out of the desert. And this one even goes above timberline. So does San Gorgonio. So
Mm-hmm.
very neat. All those different zones in there. And I like to capture them in an image, in a photograph, to
Absolutely.
bring them together.
Yeah, and timing was perfect with the cactus beginning to bloom.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those are those special moments I live for.
Absolutely.
They put the edges right together and make it poignant. You capture it, and then that's a memory of that moment in between things, rather
Mm-hmm.
than capturing something that lasts forever and goes on and on.
Right.
And there are different ways to look at things, but this has been one that's always special to me, and I like to bring them together.
Mm-hmm. Well, this next picture is one that I have seen published before that makes me go, wow. What can you tell us?
Yeah, this is a double image to begin with, not to take all the air out of it, but it connects sacred symbols to me. The sacred mountains, of course, of the San Francisco or Kachina Peaks in Arizona. The connection is with Anasazi or ancient Puebloans, whatever you want to call them, connecting the two together. They're a symbol of, they're sacred symbols, both of them. And to place them together took a little challenge in figuring out the lighting and the time, working with a dark cliff,
Mm-hmm.
and then this window, which was there, and exposing for the peaks in the distance to the south, and then double exposing this a couple of anthropomorphs here as a petroglyph site panel, which was only about 10 feet away. So I just put two things together that are close in proximity, and the connection for me is the two sacred symbols
Mm-hmm.
placed together. They connect for me something very special.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot you can write about this.
Yes.
I just will stay with that because it's visual for me.
Absolutely. Well, you have another petroglyph image here titled Three Rivers.
Yes, this is the connection here is night to dawn, is one also of my ancient connections, or near far, of course, obviously. Connecting back through time is a timeless moment. I had to hike about a mile out here to place them together. They're one image. This is one image. And, of course, with a pen light, or this is a flash, but just to barely highlight the rock without the grass. I have some where the grass is lit around it, but this, to me, is direct and symbolic. Again, with a sacred mountain. This is behind now. Sierra Blanca is, in fact, we're doing stories on New Mexico wilderness, and Sierra Blanca, or White Mountain, is a very nice one. Connecting that, it's for the Apache, is a sacred mountain. And, of course, this is a Tlaloc, kind of a figure, not a figure, but a mask, I guess you'd call it, of along the Jornada del Muerto in southern New Mexico. Two completely separate cultures, but nevertheless ancient kind of a connection.
Right.
So,
yeah, it's not a style of petroglyph that's very commonly seen.
No, it's one of my favorite. It has things. It's not necessarily popular, but it speaks to me very in strong connection. Just looking at it and thinking about it. And when I did it, of course, I was so busy trying to balance the light the way I wanted it.
Oh, sure.
Not so easy.
Right.
These are challenging. borderline on making photographs versus just, recording something.
Exactly.
So it's exciting. I
Right.
like the challenges on things like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, from here we move over to the coast of California where you have some calla lilies.
Yes, this was a rainy, Calla Lilies on the Big Sur coast. This started quite a chain reaction of
Mm-hmm.
photographing. With the one I have here is after a major rain, and of course that's the Pacific out there in the distance. The Calla Lilies are probably they're not wild, they're domestic kind, probably from Carmel, Monterey Gardens. Somehow some got loose here, and they loved the wet winters, and then of course they're not in existence. The leaves do exist all through summer, but essentially it's puts on its great show. They're beautiful flowers, pure, very pure, and almost phallic. Place them then with a wild California subject, it makes it very California-ish, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a special. And of course, it's near far. You can't deny that. It really places them right in front, so you know what the flower detail image is like, and then you begin to feel where you are, and you see, oh, it's going into some body of water, and that's the Pacific out there, and it makes a three-dimensional flowing kind of an image going from near to far.
Right. Perfect light as well for the situation.
It's soft light. It's
Yeah.
soft light, not sunlight of any kind. And that makes for the beauty of the detail, and your eye can wander through the more subtle tones. You aren't caught up in harsh lighting or some kind of side light, which could be different.
Right.
But it doesn't highlight the details. There's a lot of stuff in the greens and their decayed branches and things underneath,
Mm-hmm.
and you want to subdue those. And the soft light doesn't, for some reason, doesn't highlight some of those, so you
Right.
get a cleaned up image to boot.
Mm-hmm. Well, the next one here is Cobble Mosaic. What a fascinating riverbank.
Yeah, the thing here, and I also found things like this on the Colorado River, running the Colorado. What it does is, and this is Roaring Fork above Aspen a little bit, or downstream. What it's doing, it's capturing the different rock layers up above.
Mm-hmm.
And placing, they've been rounded by the river. The river's carried them down and done their shapes. The forms are neat. I love the forms of the rocks. But you're placing together the maroon formation and then these other lighter formations, different ones.
Mm-hmm.
And it all collects on some of these banks and sandbars or gravel bars, of course, in this case. And like on the Colorado, capture all rocks from all the way up the river clear into Colorado and Wyoming, and I just think that's in collecting in the Grand Canyon. They aren't just from the canyon, so it's I just love things like this place. And of course the culprit is on top. It's just a little bit of the flow of Roaring Fork, and this is a collection of cobbles placed there by the river, and I just I call it nature's candy box, but that's irrelevant.
Rock candy.
Yeah, rock candy. Ooh,
Yeah.
Yes.
Very nice. Well, now we're in the desert, and another one that makes me just sit here and go, wow. Perfect timing and great side lighting. Beautiful place.
Yes, this is lighting making this one work, as in the Death Valley and Mesquite Flat Dunes. Late in the afternoon, just enough to edge the what I call alkali cakes.
Mm-hmm.
Just enough to edge them so that you see them delineated, and your eye carries through up to the big dune there at Mesquite Flats, and the mountains behind are in shade totally. So it's a simple form thing going from the very bottom with pattern right on up to they have nothing to do with each other, but they just happen to be together. These are formed by rain, moisture running off into this area and collecting in pools and then drying up.
Mm-hmm.
While the dunes, of course, are blown in. So have nothing to do with this. Very little connection, actually, but there they are. It's
Yeah.
just looks like fish scales running with a odd form, which happens to be a sand dune up above.
Yes. One of the marvels of nature, I think, and
Yeah,
Death Valley is
yeah,
just a wonderful place for these very unusual marvels, so to speak.
yeah, and really the raw desert. You have some very spectacular symbolic desert there
Mm-hmm.
until you get into the flowers, and that's a whole different scene.
Mm-hmm. Well, now we're going to move up into the mountains, and I know you have a huge passion for Bristlecone Pines, and this is one that certainly exemplifies that.
Yes, this is Great Basin National Park. That's Wheeler Peak up above, and this is an example of a rain pool that formed on the a piece of driftwood that's laying there in prone position, which collected water. So there's that reflection. I love working reflections, especially in the foreground of something. And then, of course, it doubles up the image of the main features or tree that is not alive. I think this one fell down, but anyway, they last forever, these
Yeah.
bristlecone. And this one made the nice shape and symbolic of ancient bristlecone pines. It just has that survival look of surviving all the eons that it did, and yet finally gives up. And
Mm-hmm.
just to give a reflection of this makes it to me makes it I feel really powerful as a near-far
Mm-hmm.
idea and connection for me.
Yeah. Very powerful image. Now we are into winter, and would this be Mesa Verde?
Yes, this is
Uh-huh.
Cliff Palace in Mesa Verde. It's I call it a bird's nest view. It's just the view. There's no bird nest in it. But Cliff Palace, isolated in snow, not so easy to get. Sometimes they've had snow, but it hasn't been that easy to plan it and be there. So I felt very lucky with this. But
Mm-hmm.
it was just a window looking into the past, and again, a seasonal edge, and yet you start to think how it was, how they lived, the people, the Anasazi peoples, how they lived and how they kept warm and survived with a winter feel to it rather than a pleasant summer
Right.
light that just makes it look comfortable. This gives it it's beautiful and powerful at the same time, and this
Mm-hmm.
is a great connection for me.
Mm-hmm.
There's two or three things going on here that you start thinking. It makes you think about the peoples.
Right. Yeah, and those are things I've wondered myself as I've wandered around the Southwest a few times. There was no fleece or anything like that in those days.
No,
But
no,
but
and you start realizing the placement of the ruins, the homes, the
right.
places of life, and also spiritual
Mm-hmm.
connections there with the kiva you see right in front.
Mm-hmm.
They had to be pretty strong to. You have winter. You have sometimes light coming in the placement of some of the cliff dwellings and ruins. You have a light coming in, and you feel this very strongly.
Mm-hmm.
The warmth of the winter light, or the actual cold, and then think of it at night. And then in summer, the sun will pass over many times, pass over the cliff up above and make shade all day.
Mm-hmm.
And so you feel the cooling in summertime when it can be pretty blistering. And it's really fun to just connect on that level, a very simple level, but
Right.
it's kind of neat to
Mm-hmm.
envision what it was like being there. But
Yes.
anyway, this is winter at Cliff Palace.
Yeah. And as I'm listening to you describe this image, you are mentioning windows a lot, and or several times, but it's still a near-far approach, just using more of a window as a compositional
Yeah,
element.
yes, you're hitting on another level of connection, and that is windows or looking through something, which started for me well back. I would be bored and set up the camera, change lenses, do all kinds of things, say, there's nothing here. Why are you doing that? And what it is trying to get involved with subjects, with foregrounds especially, but get involved with the place and make it talk to you, make it, and listen, of course, listening to this. And this is one of those, like the window, it's isolating the place and connecting with not details, but subjects around that were part of the scene there. And that's another way of, and it's a depth of field. You need a depth of field to capture it all, too. So that makes the near-far thing come right back into play here.
Yeah. Very nice. Well, we're going to move on to the coast now, a little closer to my neck of the woods, Bandon, Oregon. A wonderful place to photograph. Very popular among nature photographers.
Yeah, this has picked up quite a bit of momentum in the last 3-4 years. This shot is one I used to do. I love the winter aspects of the Oregon and Washington coast, Northern California too. But this one, where you have a high tide, very stormy conditions, and this one you try and figure. I'm of course getting my feet plenty wet, and the tripod wants to move every time the water is shifting all the time. You never know quite what it's going to do, but after a while you get it planted and you start to see what it does, and you watch. What happens here is you have something. You have the surf flowing out, but it also, to me, was coming in. And I don't know if that conveys that. It looks like it's all flowing from behind me out to it. Well, of course, that's the tide receding. I mean, the surf receding. But then it comes back in again. That's all I was seeing in my mind's eye. And, of course, the motion, I call it ocean motion.
There you go.
Is very significant to me. I've always loved this. And you get thoroughly saltified and wet, and it's usually pretty inclement, and that to me offers challenges. I like that.
Yes, very powerful.
You get lucky, and some images do work, and this one I feel very pleased with.
It works very well, certainly. Now we've got a glacier, Mendenhall Glacier, Alaska, I believe.
Yeah, this to me is an evolutionary landscape. What you have is the glacier receding, of course, and it's very evident on the top. You have the lichen, the lace lichen, the moss, the lichen in front, and the dwarf fireweed. With a pool in the middle gives you a connection in the middle ground, but it's a real connection of the change, and what I call the evolutionary landscape is the changing from the ice age to the land building up and growth taking over. And this is the earlier part of it, showing the earliest plant life. And of course that'll recede up until the next ice age hits, and down she comes and covers all and begins anew. But this is a typical one, and then of course it's a near-far connection again, very just visually. But that was very special to me to tie these two together for the changing of the ice age to or global warming. You can call it anything you want, but it's just a natural revolving circumstance here, and I feel good I captured that in a way.
Well, one thing I've noticed in several of these images, and then other images of your work that I've seen historically, seems that you are fortunate sometimes, we all are when we get out and we explore and that sort of thing, but to come literally right after nature's gardener left, when you get these beautiful displays of flower, like the very first image we looked at from Snowmass area. And but it's really got a lot to do with just being out there on a regular basis.
Yeah, that you're hitting upon that, the higher percentage of time, and we just all can't do that, especially now so much, or more so.
Okay, so our final image today is a beautiful reflection at St. Mary Lake up in Glacier.
Yes, this is one of my Cobble Mosaic images. this again is a rare moment in time, and you look at it, and well, it just looks like a pretty image. But what's happening, you have of course, all the rocks representing the different layers at Glacier in Montana.
Mm-hmm.
They're all right in the water there. I mean, they're nicely polished too because they're wet, and it shows the different layers of the landscape at Glacier, all washed down here by glaciers.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the timing of the rain from the day before. You can't see that, but that fog was a clearing of a major heavy fog. So that
Yes.
fog is a remnant of a heavier fog earlier. And this is that moment. Oh, it's like 9 in the morning. The reflection is perfect. Early morning can be kind of a little riffly, and you get winds and little leftovers, and then all of a sudden there's a quiet period. It happens quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
You have the fog lifting, leaving. The water's quiet. The boats haven't come yet, and that's one of those moments.
Right.
It's kind of in between and getting ready for the next day's activity of storms or clouds, whatever it's going to do. But it's that rare moment when everything's quiet, and it's a transition moment, very short-lived.
Exactly.
And this one is one of those that really does it.
Right. The scene will be there every day, but it's the brief moment that you're there as the fog dissipates.
Kind of captures, in between. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very nice. Well, that is the last image of today's slideshow. Once again, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to share so much with us. It's been very educational and inspirational as well.
Thank you, Charlie, for listening to my carrying on and dissertations of the things that are very important to me and I've lived with. They're part of me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sometimes a little hard to put them in words so that they cross over and are discernible to photographers really going out and trying to find a way in the photography world. I'm just talking about nature and the landscape.
Mm-hmm.
In that world of what do we do now? What do we photograph? To me, the subject has been much more important than can be imagined.
Yes.
To me, it's the place, the landscape. I like to show the power and the beauty of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, the other one is the wild aspect of it, or our wilderness. This has been the centerpiece of my work through time, and it's getting even more concentrated now, is the wilderness part, the wild part that we really need to hold on to.
Absolutely, yes. Well, thanks again, David, and I'd like to remind our listeners that we'll have a link at the end of the post to David's website so you can peruse other collections, and we will also have a link to David's new ebook, Top Rock. And so thanks again, David, and I look forward to the next time.
Thank you, Charlie.
All right.
Look forward to it, too.